Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is really an exciting opportunity to talk about biotech in the region. I work for a company called BioLabs. We're a national company that does laboratory co-working space for primarily startups, although also some larger companies. We're in a lot of biotech hubs around the country, and we're always focused on kind of what the next exciting places are that are really up and coming and full of great talent and great ideas and great new companies. So really excited to talk to you guys. Could we kick off by just having you guys introduce yourselves? Alex, you want to start off? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Alex Meltzer. My primary kind of head role is I serve as principal for a venture creation or startup studio called Early Charm Ventures, which is based out of Baltimore. But we recently and excitingly stood up a company or brought in a company into the portfolio called Revolve Biotechnologies, which I'm serving as the CEO for now, and that is in the Delaware innovation space in Wilmington. So I'm kind of wearing a couple different hats, but really excited to be a part of the Delaware community.
Awesome. Thanks. Doug, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm Doug Godfrin, founder of a specialty pharmaceutical company called VeraMorph. We specialize in oral drug delivery technologies, and we're leveraging our proprietary drug delivery system to develop new therapeutic products. Myself and the executive team is actually based out of Boston, but we have incubator space also at the Delaware Innovation Space in Wilmington, Delaware.
Awesome. It's an incredible facility.
It really is.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been there?
We were there for a year. So actually won about a year and a half ago now, we won a FastPass award, which is sort of a program that the DIS sponsors to support promising startup companies to take up a location in what they call a lab pod, which is a small private lab in their facility for a year, typically sponsored by a large sponsor. In my case, that was DuPont, but I know they have others, sponsored by the University of Delaware and other organizations. So yeah, we were there for a year and a half.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we started a little bit more recently. So we, I think in September we signed our lease, and through a similar vehicle to Doug's company, where there was some investment from. This was called the First Fund, Delaware First Fund. Mm-hmm. So we're a little bit newer to the space, still exploring it.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Really curious to hear what you think the greatest opportunities are in this current environment that is being presented to the biotech industry and specifically in Delaware. Doug, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. It was actually it was hard for me to come up with a single opportunity that I found is the best, but I would think what's in my perspective, what has been the most impactful for us in the local area was actually being a tenant at the DIS and being able to have intimate relationships with other startup companies also being located at the same space. I think just those natural interactions that you get to have being in a close-knit community really enables you to get to know each other from a personal level as well as a commercial level, and really bond over the challenges of what it means to be an entrepreneur, but also identify opportunities for partnerships and customers. And so even now, we have established a partnership with another company co-located at the DIS, and we're working on negotiating contracts with 2 other companies also located there. So a big part of commercial success is very intimately tied to the fact that we're a tenant at the DIS. So I think, the presence of that type of, incubator space is really a huge boost to early stage traction, which then just opens doors to everything else.
Yeah, biotech is a small world, right? And knowing who to call is like such a huge part of the process of growing your company, for sure. Alex, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything Doug said. The local ecosystem is great. It's an incredible opportunity. I think for our company, at that level. And then what's really nice is kind of within this space of everything moving virtually is that in the past you had to be in Boston, right? You had to go to Boston or maybe to San Diego, right, to actually be a part of the biotech ecosystem. And now you can situate yourself in a position where there's other things, you just get more talent pools that you can tap into, new education research facility pools, being in spaces like Delaware Innovation, and you can easily now in a very streamlined manner connect with the folks in those traditional biotech hubs. And so it allows you this kind of like the way things are moving in this virtual semi-virtual manner allows you to locate and the position best for you without uplifting everything you've done in a particular place, or being forced to move to one of those two major hubs. So I think things moving virtually, certainly has. I think it was going in that direction, and I think
Yeah.
The global pandemic is kind of accelerated that process. So certainly has made things easier for us. We're connecting with people globally, from the comfort of our labs or our homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that I've noticed just among the community here, BioLabs Philly, right? We're about 200 scientists, and oddly, the pandemic has really been a team builder for the community. We all wish it wasn't happening, and it's certainly not ideal, but the small silver lining is that it really has brought community together and made it possible for people who maybe weren't spending any time on site in the past to connect with folks at other companies who they might have otherwise gotten a chance to talk to. So it's really kind of interesting. I'm curious to hear what has been the biggest challenge for you guys in navigating the biotech landscape. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of some challenges that your company has run into as you've been kind of running?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with breaking through the noise. There's tons of great science happening, in the U.S., in the Delaware region, globally, and figuring out what it is really doing soul searching, figuring out what you do, how it's different, and and then how it fits in the market. They're all really important things, and especially at the early stages where anyone who you're talking with, generally the folks we talk with are either customers or potential investors, and being able to de-risk by having that noise punch through is really important, and certainly has been a challenge, especially in kind of these low cash environments where you would love to provide all the data in the world to give that confidence, but making those strategic decisions as to what's the most critical data to actually differentiate yourself is really, really critical. And in science, there's a million questions you could ask and then try and answer, and so figuring out those key questions to get those key differentiators is certainly a challenge I think every early stage company faces.
Yeah, what have you found works? What are some good resources that you found for that? You tapped your network, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's going out and asking people what they want to see, right? Sitting in a lab kind of shelled up and trying to guess at what people want is a really good way to figure out what not to do. So kind of going out and starting those conversations early, right? I mean, a lot of the investors we have conversations with, we're not raising money. We know that we wouldn't be talking with them today anyways. But building those relationships early and often, I think, helps when you are kind of strategically building up and looking for those key differentiators.
It's really very much matches what I've seen too. It's really interesting. Doug, what about you? What do you think are the biggest challenges that you've run into in navigating the biotech landscape?
Not to mimic too much of what Alex said, but identifying what the key pain points are for potential customers, and really coming to a consensus the key stakeholders within those organizations about what are the most critical technical metrics that need to be met, because in terms of allocating your resources within a very confined budget is arguably the most important thing to accomplish to get to that next step, whether it be for investors, demonstrating traction. And so really identifying who those champions will be within your potential customer organizations, at least within, you know, pharma. These are enormous global scale organizations with a large hierarchy, and any B2B, you know, sales tactics are going to be challenging, especially with a limited, you know, workforce within a startup.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really been, you know, first and foremost, identifying what are the major milestones from a technical perspective that need to be reached. And then the next most obvious thing is just making sure that you can identify the funding sources and the partners who will help you achieve those milestones. Unfortunately, you know, nobody has the comfort or the stability in an early stage startup to be able to do those in sequential order. You need to be doing them at the same time. And so finding a way to get all of that done within your resource limitations is a huge challenge. But similar to what Alex was saying, you know, tapping into local expertise and mentors who have done this all before and can provide guidance is a very important resource to make sure that you can develop to, you know, help you get through those challenges.
Yeah, to kind of guide you through the straits, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's been one of the exciting things about having companies of different ages in our space. I mean, I work with like a tiny subset of the biotech world, right? But you definitely see a lot of that kind of, oh, I was there last year, let me kind of connect you to somebody. That can be just absolutely invaluable, right?
For sure.
I'm curious to hear kind of what you guys think, you know, what the Delaware ecosystem can do to better support biotech founders and innovators. You've talked a little bit about the Innovation Center and how incredible it is and the support that they've given you. But what about a little bit more broadly? What are the kinds of things that you're looking for in that ecosystem that don't yet exist or that you would like, you know, would be nice to have? Doug, tell us a little bit about kind of what you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah. I would arguably say that events like this are a critical component of breeding success within an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so just more prevalent and creating the forums which, you know, entrepreneurs can communicate with each other and, you know, identify opportunity to find mentors. And so, you know, organizations, personally, I've had a relationship with DESCA, the Delaware Area Chemistry Alliance. Sorry, I know I'm getting the acronym wrong, but if you look up DESCA, you know, they support a wide variety of different activities to support entrepreneurial endeavors, and I've participated in many of them. And so I think, you know, they have done a great job. Of course, they're focused in the chemistry space. And as the founder of VeraMorph, we're in a unique position because we're kind of at that interface of chemistry and pharmaceuticals. And so we can tap into that chemistry focused organization, but identifying or creating a similar type support structure specifically around life sciences in the Delaware Valley, you know, whether that be Delaware or the greater Philadelphia area, I think would be a huge boost to cultivating a much more supportive environment where mentors can meet mentees and, you know, create immense capital in terms of value of startup companies. So that would be my perspective, though.
That's really great. Thank you. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the obvious answer is more money, right? To fund all of these cool ideas. But you know, I think, yeah. What I worry about, and what I hear kind of other people kind of sometimes saying is, you know, we want to be Boston and we want to be the, you know, the Silicon Valley or San Diego or whatever, as I mentioned earlier. And I think I would advise against that because it's really important, I think, to create your own identity in this space. Delaware is uniquely positioned, you know, between Philadelphia and Baltimore, and between the three of those cities. Thinking about the broader region, there's tons of what Doug mentioned: human capital, which is really important. And these types of collaborations, there's big companies and there's top institutions, between all the Philly schools and then, the Baltimore schools as well. So, thinking a little bit bigger and coming together, hosting these types of events where you are crossing over between, the different cities, and really trying to figure out how to create that, that broader mid-Atlantic identity, I think is really important with key stakeholders at each level, kind of saying, this is what we contribute, building that consortium type feel. I actually live in Philadelphia, and then, sometimes train to Baltimore, sometimes train or drive to Wilmington. It's very close. It's super close and very accessible. And so, it's just, it's to tap into that and to set up these structures, again, just like this, I think, would continue to support the growth of biotech in the Mid-Atlantic.
Can I ask how you guys ended up starting your companies in Delaware? I mean, it sounds like, Alex, at least it's not necessarily your home stomping ground. So what drew you to the region and to the location?
We were drawn up to the kind of general area through some connections we had with some partners up in the Philadelphia area specifically. Yeah. And through that began connecting, trying to network within that space. And I actually forget exactly how we got connected to the Delaware innovation space, but at the time, we didn't have what we felt we needed in Baltimore, and we're actively looking for, this kind of like full suite of, biological and chemical equipment facilities. And so when this opportunity came, it was almost like a no-brainer, right? And at that time, I had already been in the Philadelphia area, and so it was actually a little bit easier for me to get there to Wilmington. So for a couple of reasons, yeah, we thought it was strategically would be a great space, but really it was the space that brought us up there. And yeah,
that really speaks well to the space. Doug, how about you?
Yeah, I actually hope I can exact Alex's comments even further, in the sense that so I did my PhD at the University of Delaware. Nice. So I knew the area just from doing my research during my graduate studies.
Yeah.
And then I went and did a postdoc up at MIT. And it was my postdoc work at MIT that led to the spin out of VeraMorph. And, there was sort of an intermediate phase there where we were after I'd founded the company, where I was focused primarily on, validating the technology. But in Boston, it's really an immense challenge to get yourself noticed and to differentiate yourself from all of the other talent that's there. And actually, at the time, my wife was working for Dow, and that was how I found out about this DuPont-sponsored award through DIS. And so, just maintaining communication with my network in the greater Delaware area is what kept me aware of opportunities there. Mm-hmm. And just the challenge of standing out in a very crowded space in Boston was a big reason for shifting our lab activities down to the Delaware area. And to Alex's point, there is really such an immense sort of insular focus in the Boston ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But if you really take a step back and expand your scope, there are some really great opportunities elsewhere. And I have really been able to see firsthand just how much opportunity there is in the Delaware area, even comparable to Boston. I think if Delaware continues to focus the appropriate resources to cultivating the ecosystem, it definitely has a chance of putting itself in the same tier, if you will, of Boston in terms of life sciences. I mean, it has everything it needs to achieve it in terms of existing big name companies who can support up and coming companies. It has the talent pool, right? I mean, it has world-class hospital systems between Christiana Care and the UPenn Hospital. So across the board, it really has all the ingredients needed, and it just is going to take that expert chef to bring it all together and create the beautiful cake that that is, a really powerful ecosystem. So I think it was an unexpected turn, but it's been an immensely serendipitous turn of events that we ended up in Delaware.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think, we see the same thing in Philadelphia, right? Is that capital can be moved, but talent is a lot of times what's really drawing people to the region, or collaborators, or just the ecosystem, right? Like, there are these things that don't have to be necessarily where the VC funds are, that can really make a space incredibly appealing. Alex, do you have anything you want to add about kind of just the appeal of Delaware for the biotech industry and kind of what it's bringing to the biotech industry?
Yeah, I didn't really know a whole lot about Delaware, and then we started started engaging with the Delaware innovation space, and next thing I knew, all of a sudden I realized Insight was in Wilmington, and then we moved there, and I think Prelude Therapeutics IPO'd, and then Nikang raised a $50 million Series B, and so it's just like you just kind of open the door and realize that there is a ton happening. And if you can continue to push that exposure and ride that kind of that momentum and jump in and just to kind of be in that space, I think is cool as far as seeing where you can go. It certainly has a nice, we're very early stage all the way up to big companies, right? So you have that full spectrum of
right.
Types of companies and sizes and stages of companies, and so just pulling back the blinds, I think. Has been really exciting.
Yeah, that is really exciting. It's always fun to be somewhere where you feel like everything is just starting to like really explode. I've had the same experience in Philadelphia, right? Which, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of overlap and resources in common and things like that. One of the things that we're struggling with in Philadelphia is that we're out of lab space. There is no more lab space in the city of Philadelphia at the moment. Is that something you guys are seeing as an issue in Delaware as well, or is there a little bit more that's kind of drawing people to space?
I think I would say that, at least since I've been at the Delaware innovation space, I kind of see it as the preeminent, at least wet lab incubator opportunity. I know that the University of Delaware recently opened an incubator on their new STAR campus, which is their science, technology, and research campus. And so those two are the primary opportunities, but I do think that even they are starting to get full, and which is a great sign, right? That means that there is an influx of startup companies of great opportunity and potential. But yeah, I think to continue that growth trajectory, there is, I think, a need for continued expansion of lab space, for sure.
Yeah, we're seeing the exact same thing here. All right, stepping back slightly to learn a little bit more about what you guys do. Kind of curious, tell us a little bit more about what your companies do, and what the legacy or the lasting impact that you're hoping to have with that work. So, Doug, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Yeah. So
this is like my favorite questions.
I mean, this is a pretty grandiose question, and so I mean, the legacy that you want to leave is, I actually have a history of cystic fibrosis within my extended family, and that's what I think originally got me really curious about medicine, and our opportunities to address therapeutics within the cystic fibrosis space is maybe not so high on the list of opportunities, but I think along the lines, any founder or CEO who gets into a therapeutic oriented company wants to have a legacy of improving people's lives, right? Of translating science into meaningful therapeutics that increase the standard of living. And so that's a true motivation. And then it's just of, weeding your way through all the obstacles of achieving that. But what we're doing at VeraMorph is, trying to translate what is a platform technology into meaningful therapeutic products on the market. And so we're identifying specific disease areas and classes of compounds within which our platform is uniquely capable of infusing value by improving clinical outcomes. So we're focused on small molecule therapeutics. And in that area, there's a major problem where drugs are becoming really poorly soluble, which they can't dissolve in water. And so since your body is primarily made of water, that makes it really hard for your body to absorb those drugs. And that is the primary focus of our technology.
Awesome.
The good thing for us is that something on the order of like 80 to 90% of small molecule drugs fit into this category. But there are existing technologies to help overcome these issues. So really, our priority is in identifying those compounds that even existing technologies really can't overcome their limitations. And so it's sort of a double-edged sword, because it means that there's opportunities out there for us, but we still have to prove ourselves in terms of validating that we can achieve improved outcomes. And so it's a really challenging space to be in because of the competition and in the amount of proof that you have to generate. But what's great is, we found that there are, similar to what Alex said, Nikang and Prelude as two examples of previously small but now really successful companies. Just kind of, I bet, until recently, after the IPO, they might not have been on people's minds, but now they're on people's minds. And I think it wasn't until we were located in the Delaware space that we got to know them. And so there's all these small players out there, and we're just looking forward to the opportunity to create some recognition of our technology and our company to help get the word out there of what we're capable of accomplishing, and hopefully identifying really mutually beneficial opportunities to partner with companies and help lives.
Well, thank you, Doug. I'm going to throw the same question to you. This is, like I said, I love asking entrepreneurs kind of why they're doing what they're doing and what impact they're hoping it will have.
Yeah, I love the question. It forced me to be like really self-reflective, which, in day-to-day grind is not something that I admittedly take the time to do. So I think, Doug hit the nail on the head. Impacting human health is the major driver, right? I think everyone, whether you're in biotech or not, knows someone whose lives can be improved by a new medicine or a new therapy or a new preventative measure. And so, being a part of that system is, just incredibly, incredibly exciting and incredibly rewarding. And I think the second thing, and I apologize if anyone is not a football fan, but I kind of think of it in terms of this with coaching legacies. And so for me to do one thing, I think is really impactful, but to leave a lineage, kind of like Andy Reid, who probably some people know because he was in Philadelphia, but he's actually known for all these other coaches that now are in the league doing really great things. And so thinking about, what it means to be a leader and do something that is directly kind of impactful, but then that ripple of effect too is really important. So thinking about, how to lead and pass that, hand that baton along, because science is a never ending endeavor. And so I responded your grandiose question, I think, with a grandiose response. And then specifically what we're doing at Revolve Biotechnologies is we've got some really, really cool technology to be able to explore proteins through protein engineering in ways that have been kind of really tricky to tap, really non-conventional or unconventional ways to mix and match and access mutational variants to improve protein function. And so today we've done a lot of work for other companies in improving, their AAVs or their enzyme therapies. And so it's great to kind of see that work kind of go off and those companies to mature. And then as we grow the company ourselves, we're certainly looking inward, just like you just forced me to do, and start, building some in-house therapies as well. So we're really excited about our future and leveraging the technology to kind of access these new protein spaces.
That's really exciting. It's, you know, one of the greatest joys of my job is that I get to talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and there's no group of people who are more passionate about what they do, I think, than entrepreneurs in the biotech and health space. Like, folks have both personal and just intellectual passion for what they do, and it makes community building a lot easier, right? If you have people who genuinely care about what they do and can't shut off their brains at the end of the night because they're so excited, those are going to be good people to talk to. They're going to be easy to network with, and they're going to be really supportive of each other and collaborative, right? And that's, you know, it sounds like a lot of what's been really appealing to you guys about where you are is that kind of shared passion and shared mission on some level, right? Your targets might be slightly different, but you're really looking at achieving the same kinds of impact in the world. And again, I think COVID has been an experience of, you know, there's no better firsthand experience for the whole world, even for folks who aren't scientists, to see.
Yeah, you took it right out of my mouth. I really wanted to say that if there's a silver lining out of this at all, it really, there's a much more significant public focus on the life history. And so it really does add that much more to the motivation to achieve success, because so many more people are aware of what the implications are. And so it you know, this is sort of external to just the ecosystem within entrepreneurs themselves, and really generating interest and recognition from the broader society, right? In terms of really supporting the fact that, you know, startups can really cultivate transformational product development and improve lives across the board. And I think that that's just been, you know, one way to be happy about everything that's going on recently.
Yeah. I actually just read a study that there's been a huge surge in interest in public health education. So a lot of folks who are going into public health as a specialty, because we're all having this experience together. So.
Yeah, let's try and avoid this from happening again. Yeah. Let's educate people to let that happen.
You know, I mean, it's nothing like a little fire to kind of make you buckle down and remember why you go to work every day, right? You know, makes me step back in the morning when it's, you know, gray and early, and I'm like, I feel really good about what I support by going to work, right? And being able to have that passion for your job and be surrounded by people who have that same sort of sense of mission is a real privilege, I think. All right, let's do one more question before we do Q&A. So anybody in the audience who has questions, please put them in the chat. Folks, curious to hear kind of how our community can help you going forward. So whether that's the, you know, broader Baltimore, Delaware, Philadelphia community, or whether that's the Delaware specific community or biotech as a whole, what can we help you do to help you succeed? Alex, take it away.
Yeah, I think we touched on it a bit earlier too, and I think, you know, these kinds of events are really a huge boost to supporting the ecosystem. I can say from personal experience, you know, moving to Philly, I have a fairly decently strong network in Baltimore. I was there for you know, about 6.5 years, and then coming up here and, you know, working kind of in this, you know, virtual environment, it just makes it a little bit more challenging to bring new people in, right? So I think like these types of events are really important and really crucial to continuing to make sure we push forward as you know, some of the in-person stuff is less available. So that's definitely the number one thing, and it's also the lowest hanging fruit, right? You know, it's I think so. I think for those two reasons, that's absolutely the biggest thing we can do now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Venture Cafe team. How about you? Go for it.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I'd like to identify something complementary to what Alex mentioned, but I really do think that facilitating communication between entrepreneurs and not just each other, but at least from my perspective, what's been, again, really beneficial is in exposure to potential and customers. And so bridging the gap, at least from a B2B industry perspective, which is really truly the core, I think, of the life science space, is bridging the gap between startups and large pharma companies who will eventually likely license the products or the IP that's developed by the small pharma. And so bridging that gap, creating awareness and exposure to those potential licensors will be huge. But also, I see that maybe from if a small pharma is in the middle and then the large pharma who licenses at the top, bridging the gap from the bottom too, which is going back to universities. So I think back on my time as a PhD at the University of Delaware, and one of my favorite events going to was something called MASM, MASM, which stood for Mid-Atlantic Soft Matter. And so that was a consortium across, Philadelphia schools, University of Delaware, Johns Hopkins, even going down to Washington, D.C. And really that stretch of the I-95 corridor is so tiny within the grand scheme of things. And there's just an immense amount of talent there, not just from workforce, but also in terms of just raw innovative ideas that have the potential to translate into commercially impactful technologies. And so I think creating a more significant drive, or at least awareness of innovative entrepreneurial opportunities within universities, which I think is ongoing. From my awareness of the University of Delaware, the Horn Entrepreneurial Program is just taking off like a rocket.
Yeah.
They're creating a lot of opportunities within the University of Delaware campus, but I think expanding upon that would go a long way for again just creating an ecosystem that can tap into all the resources in the local area.
Yeah.
But I wanted to build off of what Alex mentioned too earlier in terms of funding and always wanting to have more funding available. I will say, VeraMorph has benefited from a couple of funding opportunities that I wanted to highlight while I have a chance. One being Delaware sponsors a new program called the EDGE Grant, which specifically retains a portion of funding for innovation-oriented startups, a grant for pursuing and developing innovative technologies. It's a very worthwhile program, and they're very supportive of local companies. And the other is actually sponsored by the Delaware Biotechnology Institute, or the DBI, and they have something called CAT grants, which are focused on public-private partnerships between startups, or they're not startups, it's actually oriented across commercial entities and University of Delaware principal investigators, or PIs. But it's something that as a startup we've been able to benefit from, because it provides funding and resources that would just be so expensive through, say, a contract research organization that you get for significantly reduced prices through partnering with the University of Delaware. So I do think that those are worth noting to introduce to the ecosystem when we have the chance. But I still agree with Alex that it's always better to add more to the palette.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thanks for highlighting those too. That's always appreciated. Last thing, I guess we'll just go to the questions real quick. Gary says, go Horn entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And Tracy asks, what's the biggest thing you needed to learn as an entrepreneur after coming out of university work? Doug, do you want to address that?
Ooh, I think the easiest thing to say is just learning how to turn off the scientist and turn on the business person. That is actually way harder than you think it is. As a scientist, I always came up thinking, oh, being a business person is easy. All you do is talk to other people. How hard could that be? It's really hard. It's really hard to talk to other people. So you really got to learn how to do it. And so I would say that's definitely been the hardest thing about transitioning from researcher to entrepreneur.
Well, you're doing an amazing job of it. Alex, what do you think?
I think for me, it was distilling down all of the interesting questions that I wanted to answer to the ones that are the most critical. When I was in my PhD program, I was kind of afforded the luxury of thinking of something would pop into my head, and I would go test it, right? So now it's much more purposeful. There's much stricter timelines that you had to adhere to, and actually learning how to build timelines and sticking to them is a challenge within itself. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I still, I'll write out a Gantt chart, and it's never even when I double my original Gantt chart, I have to double it again in reality. So and that's with doing only the most critical things that we think we need to do. So definitely the focus on what's most important. Yeah, the prioritization
and I could not agree more with you, Alex. I think I might actually change my answer back on all the stuff I've had to go through. That's another really good one.
Yeah, no, transitioning to kind of the business side of things too was not it's not that intuitive. Even though I think like people think science is harder than business, it's a totally different mindset, and one that absolutely needs training and cultivating.
Nathan says it's too early in Sydney for Gantt charts.
I'm sorry, Nathan.
Too early for Gantt. This means you don't have your Gantt chart. Great. Well, with that, why don't we wrap it up? Thank you guys so much both for being on this panel. Really appreciate your insights. It was super good to hear, and I'm so excited to come down and visit you guys once all this is over and we can do tours again. So
yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was fun.